Alright. So I said I was going to make a video. I didn't really think this shit out, and I know it's going to be kind of long or whatever, so you're just going to have to bear with me. But I'm trying to do it all in one take. Basically, anybody that's followed me for a really long time kind of knows my situation. I've been dealing with really bad chronic lower back pain it's been 13 years now. But for people that don't know, I'll try to quickly summarize what happened. When I was 16, had a skateboarding accident. I fell on a half pipe. There was a screw sticking up. It ripped a chunk of flesh out of my back, right over my L4. It was an inch deep, and it was the size of a 50-cent piece. Went to the hospital, had everything stitched up. They told me I should be fine, but obviously keep an eye on it. They wanted to make sure that I didn't have long-lasting negative effects from the injury, and I didn't. I just carried on. It healed normally, and I didn't really have any lasting pain after the first couple of weeks. Flash forward, 20 years old, and I go to the gym with some friends. I'm lifting weights. I go to bench press more than I'd ever bench pressed before, and I felt like I pulled a muscle in my back. Went home, iced it, put heat on it. It didn't get better. So a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by. After 3 weeks, I go to a doctor, and I get prescribed like muscle relaxers or whatever. They're like, it's probably just a really bad pulled muscle. Long story short, it never gets better. Years go by. I go to every single different type of doctor that you can think of. I did all the weird holistic shit, acupuncture, acupressure, cryotherapy. I went to the Cleveland Clinic after I'd been dealing with it for a few years, and talked to specialists and had all kinds of imaging done. Nothing helped. Everything that I tried, nothing really helped. There were some things that kind of helped a little bit, but nothing like that, obviously made it go away. So I think it was the beginning of 2020. I'm at the end of my rope, and I'd heard all these amazing stories about stem cell therapy. I want to move because I got this light shining in my face. But I'd heard all this great stuff about stem cell therapy, and so I was like, I'll find a place, I'll save up my money, because insurance doesn't cover stem cell therapy. So I was like, I'll save up my money, and I'll give this stem cell therapy stuff a try. Try that. Nothing works. The stem cell doesn't work either. I started having like a really bad reaction like right away, or at least I thought I was having a bad reaction right away. Started having all these like weird heart stuff going on, palpitations, chest pains. My heart, I would wake up in the middle of the night and my heart rate would be like 150, and I'd be drenched in sweat. I went to the hospital multiple times, had a bunch of tests done. Everything seemed to be fairly normal. So that ends up getting better over time, and then I developed these migraines, and the migraine stuff had been happening for months, until I found out what I'm about to tell you about. But I was waking up every single day with migraines. I had them when I was a kid, and they would come and go, but this was like an every single day thing. So years before all of this, my mom, everybody in my family has known what's been going on, and they've all tried to help with stuff. And my mom found this book, and she gave it to me, and it was called Healing Back Pain by Dr. Sarno. And I read the first chapter, and it annoyed the fuck out of me, and so I threw it away. Just, was not trying to hear any of that shit. So flash forward, after the stem cell stuff doesn't work and I'm having all these new issues, I start getting desperate, and I've got a kid now. So it's like really important that I try to figure this out. And I'm at this point, I'm like, I'm not gonna fix it, but I got to figure out a way to like cope with it better. So I started watching all these YouTube videos, just like how to like meditate through pain and all this, weird shit. And every day that I go to the gym, I get in the sauna and I'd listen to this stuff for like a half hour. And one day I just stumble upon this video where this guy is talking about the same thing that Dr. Sarno was talking about in that book. And it's been years now, so I'm like, like this guy, he's like pouring out his heart and he's like telling this whole long story and it sounds really genuine, and I'm like, what do I have to lose? I need to like revisit this and give it a try. So I got the book. I actually found like a free audiobook on YouTube, and so I just listened to it that way. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, holy shit, like this, not that I like thought that it was gonna fix me right away. I still, like, I'm a very skeptical person, so I still was like, bullshit. But I'm also like looking like, well, where is like, like what's the end game here? Because usually when there's like some weird scammy type shit like that, there's always like some money motivation. But it's not like they were like trying to sell anything, it was just like it was just tons of people all over the world that kept sharing stories about how this had helped them so much. So I like fully went in on it and was like, I'm gonna really try this. So basically what they're talking about, it's called TMS, it stands for tension myositis syndrome. And what they're saying is that sometimes people will, it's like a personality disorder. Sometimes people will have a hard time dealing with certain emotional distress, and it manifests into physical pain symptoms. And so the first book that I read, the healing back pain one, they just go through all these different stories of different people and kind of like help paint a picture of who this might affect. And it's super broad. But I'm not going to get into my own personal shit. I don't really think that's important. But I'll go over some of the people, some of the types of people that this tends to affect. People who are high stress worriers, people who are perfectionists. A big one is trauma, a lot of times childhood trauma. So there's like a bunch of stuff that I've watched TED Talks where now we're starting to discover that what happens to you as a kid has a really profound and lasting effect on how you turn out as an adult. And I mean, that's obvious, but like on a physiological level, the way that it affects your brain and your body is really crazy. So people who have been through trauma in their childhood, people who have been through trauma in relationships, abusive relationships, stuff like that, all the way to like people who hate their job. It's like I said, it's so broad. But what can tend to happen is something is really bothering you emotionally, and it triggers this reaction in your brain where your brain sort of thinks that it's like trying to protect you from that unpleasant emotional experience. And so it creates this physical symptom. A lot of times it's pain, but it can be so many different things. It'd be migraines, stomach issues, carpal tunnel, fibromyalgia, like the list goes on and on and on. And if you get on YouTube and you research this stuff, I hate even using the term research and YouTube in the same sentence, but if you get on YouTube and you look up TMS and hear other people's stories, it's crazy the amount of different things that this can cause. So for me, I realized, like I said, I'm not going to get super like into my own personal stuff, but I realized like, I am the type of person that I don't really deal with emotional things that bother me. If something really upsets me, if I'm really angry or sad or whatever, I just push that shit down and move forward. And that is like a big problem when it comes to TMS. And so I'm like, maybe this does apply to me. Maybe I should like try to do some of the things that they're recommending. So like a lot of the stuff is like journaling. It's so simple and so stupid. And I know there are probably people right now exactly like how I felt, where you're listening to this and you're irritated to the point where you want to turn it off because the shit that you're experiencing is so real that you're thinking there's no way that I could be causing this myself. There's no way that this could be some psychosomatic thing in my head or whatever. And that's the thing. It's not necessarily in your mind. Your mind is causing it, but there is a physiological change that occurs. So what Dr. Sarno, and there's also a lot of other people, a lot of other doctors, a lot of other people across the world that have kind of came to the same conclusion. Sometimes they call it different things or whatever, but it's all pretty much the same thing. But they realized that when this happens, the body, the brain cuts off blood circulation and oxygen circulation, oxygen primarily, to certain parts of your body. It doesn't cut it off completely, obviously, but it restricts it. And that's where they think that the pain part comes from. So the pain that you feel is 100% real. And for me, I mean, it was horrible, horrible bad. That's why I took such offense when I first read this shit, because I'm like, dude, the fact that anybody would think this is in my head just infuriates me. Also, I had the issue of, so for my personal pain, it was never like triggered by activities. A lot of people's pain comes on when they do a certain thing. Mine was actually from like sedentary, like if I can't sit, if I lay for a really long time, it would start to get really bad. I got to the point where I couldn't watch movies, couldn't take long car rides, flights, anything like that. Caused me tons of pain. And obviously that affected my sleep, because to sleep you gotta lay down for a long time. And there were times where I would go for several days without sleeping, and if you've ever done that, like, you get kind of crazy. I would start to hallucinate. It was really making me kind of nuts, and I got to the point, over the course of 13 years, I got to the point of wanting to take my life many times, many times. So the pain can be very, very real, and very severe, but structurally there's nothing wrong. And that's another thing that's important. I know this is getting long, but it's very important to mention this. Dr. Sarno found that in his patients, he was giving a lot of x-rays to patients for things outside of back pain, but it would be in the same area where you would see the spine, and he would notice in a lot of patients that weren't reporting back pain that they had things like bulging and herniated discs and stenosis and all these other back problems. But when he would ask them, is your back hurt, they would say no. And then, on the flip side, there were a lot of people who would go in reporting severe back pain, and they would give them imaging and wouldn't notice anything with their back. So he kind of came to the conclusion that there are certain spinal abnormalities that are totally normal, and they don't really have anything to do with whether you are or you aren't in pain. And so Des is an x-ray tech, and when I was talking to her about all this stuff, she was like, no, 100%. There's so many times that I do x-rays on patients and I see their back, and their back looks fucked up, and then I talk to them about it and ask them if they're in pain or whatever, and they say that they're fine. And then on the flip side, the same thing is true. So I'm like, that's really, really interesting. So I started doing the journaling stuff. I started to try to, they say that every time you're in pain, and like I said, it doesn't have to be back pain, every time you have a headache, every time, carpal tunnel, the guy's story with carpal tunnel is really interesting, and I can link his story as well. But every time you start to experience pain, don't think about the pain. Think about things that are bothering you emotionally, and you just kind of try to process them and work through them. And it's different for everybody, the level of success that you can have from it, and how quickly it comes about. There were some people that said they read the book and were healed of 10 years of pain instantly. And then there are other people that, a small percentage of people don't get any effect from this, but it is a very small percentage. There are a lot of people, though, that it can take months, years. Me personally, in 13 years of everything that I have tried, nothing has come even close to what this has done for me. I have not had a pain-free day in 13 years until I started doing this shit. And the pain isn't gone all the way. I still have back pain, but it's typically only when I'm doing these things that really aggravate me. Before, it was like I would do something that would aggravate it, and then I would be in pain no matter what I was doing for days at a time, and I would have to do all of these things. I had this like checklist of shit that I had to do to make sure that I made it better. And now it's at a point where even if I do something like sit for a really long time or lay for a really long time, my back might start to hurt while I'm sitting or laying, but for, you know, the duration of how long I'm in pain is nothing like it was before. I get up, I move around, you know, and within a half hour I'm back to feeling fine, which is crazy. It made me cry the very first time when I realized what was happening, and I've cried a lot since all this stuff happened. I realized that I'm the type of person, I never cry about anything. I never like let like emotions out. And when you're not letting emotions out or things that are bothering you psychologically out, they tend to like fester inside of you, and they can have real physical problems occur. And so I've been doing this stuff, and it's been working amazing for me. And I really wanted to share it with other people. There's a lot more to be said, but I really wanted to share it with people because I think that it's worth a try. Even if you do have something structurally wrong with you, a lot of times it's like your brain has made up its mind that you're going to be in pain, and so you're in pain, and that's how it works. There was another thing that I really wanted to say also, and I'm forgetting. God damn it. This is what happens when you go off the cuff. Oh yeah, so in regards to what I was just saying, there are certain things, if you've noticed, like things that cause you more pain, you create like these like neural pathways, and it's like you condition yourself, sort of like Pavlov's dog. You condition yourself to expect the pain, and so it happens. And so that's like one of the big things, is breaking that cycle of expecting pain. I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but like sometimes when I'm about to go out and drink a beer, I'll get a beer and I'll sip it, and that very first sip, it's not enough beer to actually make me feel drunk, but my brain knows how I'm about to feel, and so it releases endorphins, dopamine, and I get this like rush, even though there's no way that the alcohol is doing it. It's just the expectation of like, I'm about to feel good. The same thing happens with negative feelings. And so my back would start hurting sometimes right before bedtime, before I ever laid down, before I did anything. That's when my muscles would get the tightest, and that's when it would hurt the worst. So, breaking that pattern is really important also. Like I said, there's tons of information, and no, it's not one of those things where people are trying to sell you shit. You can get all this information for free. You don't have to go and see anybody. I know that they do have like seminars, and there are doctors around the world and stuff that probably do make a profit off of this, but there's no necessity to do anything like that. You can do all of this from home. And I think that it would change so many people's lives if they knew this and understood it. The big problem they have, like Western medicine definitely has noticed a correlation between mental distress and pain. And so what they often do, the Cleveland Clinic tried to do this, my PCP tried to do this, they put people on antidepressants for chronic pain, and it works. And they don't know why it works, but this whole thing kind of makes it make sense. And the problem, I mean, obviously a lot of people know antidepressants come with a whole bunch of issues. I was diagnosed bipolar and ADD and all this stuff as a kid, and so I had all kinds of meds shoved down my throat, and none of them came without consequence. Some of them, the consequence was really, really great. So, I think that type of stuff should be avoided at all costs. It should only be reserved for people who direly need it. But I think that it's really important to try to work through this shit naturally without medicine. So, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I don't know if I'm going to, there's already so much great information out there. I don't think that it's really that important for me to keep talking about it and sharing my story, but it's one of those things when something like really amazing happens to you, you have this urge to like talk about it. And so I don't know, I might make some more content, just kind of going over this stuff and following where I go with it. I've been holding myself back from doing so many things for years and years because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it because of my back pain, and now I'm gonna do it. So it would be kind of cool to, to, I guess, keep track of all this stuff. But all right, I'm gonna cut this shit short. It's already 20 fucking minutes long, but that's pretty much it. Bye.